will be alive. You may hear children come in.
We made it with like 1 minute to spare.
Yeah. So Kelsey was actually being a teacher today.
Yes, teacher. I represented.
Yes. Oh, what do you have on?
It says teacher.
Established 2019.
Oh, shout out, Mom.
Which was a question I was actually going to ask you is how long you've been a teacher. I'm going to go get the toddler and you're going to say how you became a teacher, your experience real quick.
Got it. My credentials.
Yeah, that way.
So I'm Kelsey. This will be my 5th year to be a teacher. I started teaching the year of COVID. So I started normal and then COVID happened. And so then my 2nd year of teaching was through that. And then I've taught, reading intervention for my 1st year. Then I taught 1st grade. And then this will be my 3rd year and 4th grade. No. 3rd year and 3rd grade. So
I forgot that you became a teacher in COVID and I became a midwife in COVID.
That's right. Yeah, because she came to visit me to celebrate whenever you became a midwife.
You know what? Actually, my Venmo picture is that. And is one of the pictures when I was in Seattle. And last night I was sending it to somebody and I was looking at the picture and I was like, man, life was different.
So different. I know.
So anyways, but she is an amazing teacher. She has not taught me, so I don't know this, but everyone says this that has her as a teacher. She's kind of like, I'm going to brag on always. I'm always bragging on her. But like everyone says this that knows her. They're like, oh, that teacher. That's the teacher. Yeah.
Really nice.
Anyway, so we homeschool. My family does. Thanks, Kelsey. And we have the little 2-year-old here. I think she knows I'm going on a date soon, so she's a little upset about it. But you're going to play with Kelsey.
I'm being on aunt duty today.
Yes. Double duty because she's doing this with us. So where was I going to go? Oh, so we homeschool, but our kids did go to public school, a magnet school. Hey, Bradley. Hi. He said he might have one.
Hey.
And so now they're homeschooled, but we did do the go to school thing. And actually my middle child, I'm constantly like, are you sure you don't want to go to school? Which actually you were really encouraging once with me on that. Cause you were like, actually he is the kind of kid that needs to be homeschooled because if he were in public school, it might be more of a challenge. So anyways, encouraging. But that being said, I think that it can be sometimes a little bit of like an excitement and a challenge to get back into the routine of school, whether you're a homeschool family and mom, or you're going back to school. So that's why I wanted to have Kelsey on. And I actually had some questions written down and I just realized they're on my phone. So I can't actually see the questions that people submitted, but I do remember some of them off the top of my head. So one of the first ones was somebody said, how can we best support teachers at the beginning of the school year, like our teacher friends? Like if you have a friend who's a teacher, not necessarily if you're the parent and that's your teacher, but like if you have a friend who's a teacher, or she said homeschool moms. I'll give you my answer. I was thinking, here's the universal truth. Coffee. You can support us both. Coffee. Check on your friends.
It's actually so true. Like it's funny though, because it's usually my friends that are teachers that we get it for each other. But one of my best friends who is still in Seattle where I moved for a little bit, she's a teacher and we start school at different times and we both understand. So every time we're about to enter into whether it's coming back from winter break or starting the school year, we always send each other coffee on Venmo because we know.
So coffee. So there's my answer. But what's your answer, Kelsey?
I mean, yeah, honestly, like little things like that. Mm-hmm. Coffee. I feel like, I'm an extrovert. I love to hang out with people. So for me, like having someone else just kind of make a plan and say, hey, come hang out, because it's really easy for me when school's back in session to kind of feel a little bit drained at the end of the day or like when it comes to the weekend. And so then I'm like, well, I don't feel like planning anything, even though I'd love to hang out with somebody. And so just somebody texting me like, hey, if you want to go out to dinner, here's the plan, we're going. That'd be nice.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad. I mean, I would say that's the case for me too, because thinking about leaving and like all that like even what it took to like get ready today and do this ahead of time, like it's a lot. And so sometimes if you're the one who has to like think through making it happen, that's just too much, and then you won't do it. So yeah, just saying like, hey, we're gonna go do this or we should go do that.
Yeah.
That's probably
Yeah,
fair.
I would say that, and honestly, yeah, coffee and then coffee. Yeah, that'd be the best answer from me.
Well, and for you personally, we could support you by heading over and following her TikTok.
I do
She
TikTok
does
as a
do
hobby.
she is a fun little side gig as a
Yeah, we're coming up
TikToker.
on a year,
Yeah,
actually,
she's
so
doing pretty good. She's very interesting. She's
la
the only reason my conspiracy theorist self has a TikTok.
just for
So
me,
just for
just for
Kelsey, that's
me.
the only reason.
Yeah.
Okay, another question was what are good gifts for teachers, like back to school gifts? So I'm gonna silence this one.
So I would say, well, a lot of teachers do make Amazon wish lists, of things more so for their classroom. So, yeah, I like to think of it like a baby registry. Like when you make a baby registry, you're probably putting things on there that are necessary for your classroom, but then you're also putting some fun things on there too.
Mm.
Like I had a Bluetooth microphone on my classroom wish list last year that somebody got for
Oh,
me, which is obviously not like a necessary thing to have, but it makes it fun, like when you're doing bingo or just anything like that.
see, just so
So,
much fun.
so the Amazon wish list is always like I have parents sometimes at the beginning of the year ask like, "What can we get you?" or like, "What can we get for the classroom?" And so I just go ahead and create that so that way I have an answer because I'm also the type of person that if you ask me on the spot, I'm like, I don't know. Like I don't know what would be a good gift. So, I always make that and it's easy to share, but some things that I have on there for the classroom are like snacks are always a good one, allergy friendly. Really, I mean, yeah,
What
it's probably
about like
different between
for
teachers,
you?
but
So, I mean, my pool is going to be my clients whom are pregnant, and because I have a lot of teachers. But I know for them, things that are really helpful is like if they have a little fridge, can
yeah.
you have a fridge in
Mhm.
your, yeah,
Yeah.
so having a fridge and keeping that stocked with like the drinks and snacks that they like, and like even just like the really good energy bars, like some of the ones that you have to keep cold, like healthy snacks.
Yeah.
Because I was just talking with a teacher last week that they start back, well, they're like she's works the same district as you, and she was like, I'm so good when I stock it, but then when I run out, it takes me like weeks
That's
to get
true.
it restocked, you know? So just like, I think like showing up with the snacks that they like
Yeah.
to restock, I think that, I mean, I would think,
That is
right?
very true. Yeah, I've had parents in the past that no, like for instance, one time it downpoured at dismissal and all the teachers were outside like trying to hurry and get kids in cars so they didn't get wet. So all the teachers were just completely soaked and the next day one of my parents came to school and she just had like a little drink and a snack and wrote a card that said like
Oh,
thanks for getting my kiddo in fast and safe. Like just little things like that go a long way because it's like, oh, they noticed, you know? So
yeah.
anything that makes you feel noticed, even just like a small card or just something. A lot of times teachers will send out at the beginning of the year on their like little flyers, things they like or stores they like to shop at or places they go. So just anything in that realm that kind of I don't know, applies to their interests always goes a long way. Even just a special note, at least for me.
Okay, those are good.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember all the ones. I think I got two more in my head that I can remember. The next one was what suggestions do you have for parents to make drop off go easier? And I think because I had that question a couple times, and one of them has a slightly older children. Like they're not just talking about like a kindergartner. So I assume just based on my experience, like drop off can just be hectic because it's hectic and you're learning like the new flow. Because I don't know, with us it seemed like they were changing the flow like every single year, even if you're at the same school. So I don't know, tips on that, whether it's like their first time going to school, kindergartners, or um
Yeah.
just the drop off.
I would say so if you have a young kiddo, like kindergarten first, and they're kind of new to the whole drop off thing, honestly practicing with them, like how they're going to get out of the car and what they're going to need to grab. Like I do that in the classroom too with anything. Like we just practice it and make it fun. So I would just say, like, practice it. Or the other thing that might be helpful, if it's possible, I know if you have, like, car seats and stuff, it might be difficult, but practicing sitting on the side where you're gonna drop off. So, like, if you pull up and your child gets out or the sidewalk is on the right side, having them sit over there, because usually, I know, at least, I mean, I guess I can speak for my school, we have people there that are helping drop off, but if they're on that side, it makes it a little bit easier and smoother for them to hop out. And then, of course, if they're on your side, then I guess you could help too, but I feel like that would be a helpful thing. And then, as far, I would say too, to add to that, dismissal is actually the one, at least on the teacher end, that seems to be more chaotic, because kids are ready to get home, parents are ready to pick up their kid and see them. And so that one always feels a lot more complicated. And I would say the biggest advice is helping your kid know what the system is as much as they can once you figure out what it is. So, like, for our school, we have family numbers. So each family or kid has a number, and they have to listen to it on the radio, and they have to know when that number's called, you get up, you go to your cone. And usually where we see the hiccups are if they, like, don't know their family number, or they weren't listening, so they didn't hear their number get called, and then we're going to find them. So just making sure you're practicing with them, I feel like, is what I
Oh,
would say.
okay, that's good.
Yeah. And how to put their backpack on, like, if they're little, like, practicing, "Okay, put your backpack on, here's how you put it on, take it off," like, stuff like that, because then it just helps them not have to have as much help doing all the things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the last one I remember, and I just realized I might have this is only my second time to go live, and so it's a learning curve. I might have done go live together on accident because it's telling me we're waiting for guests. So hopefully the recording is appropriate, and I apologize to people who will watch it later because I know that's kind of typically how it goes. It's like it's
Oh,
watched
I see,
later.
like,
There
there's
may
somebody
be
who's
like a
supposed to pop
blank.
out.
Yeah, I'm like, oh no, but now we
Um,
know. I need to double check that
it's all
before I hit
good.
go live. Okay, so the last one that I can remember was on that same note, which was how can parents prepare the morning for them, like to go smoother for them? And I have a few tips on that one that I've
I
learned.
was gonna say, y'all might have more, or you might have more tips just because you're the one at home doing it
Well,
with
I
them.
kind of thought so. I have a few I'll share, but I wondered, like, from your perspective, if there's things you see, like, okay, like they didn't eat, like they don't eat breakfast
Mhm,
regularly or something like that, and you see that that makes the morning hard for you, like once
mhm.
they get there, or they're like really sleepy. So, like, are they not getting enough sleep? Like stuff like that. Do you see
Yeah.
that? I don't know,
Mhm. Yeah, for
especially with little
sure.
kids.
Yeah, I think, like, having as much routine as you can, like, that's the difference we usually see at school versus at home, that I notice a lot of parents, like, I actually, more than often, I would say, I get parents who are like, "Do you not see this at school?" Like, they're coming to me saying that they are trying to solve, a small problem at home, and they're wondering how, like, I do it at school, or what's my perspective at school, and I'm like, "Oh, I actually don't see that at all." And I think it's because not only is home, like, their safe space to let out all emotions. I mean, I hope they feel safe at school too, but
Yeah.
that's just, like, their people. So, but also school is a lot more structured and routine, and home is not, typically, because that is your place to relax and not stick to a strict schedule. But I think if you can have some if you can have some routine at home as far as, like, bedtime and what they do when they get home, like if they have chores, or if you have them practicing any sort of, like, hi girl.
She wants to be a
She
part.
wants to be a part.
Hey, maybe if you're in
Um,
it, you'll be
yeah, you want to
happier.
be in
You
it?
want to be in it? Look. There. Look. Say hello.
Wow.
Okay.
But yeah, just establishing any sort of routine, I feel like, helps. I know we go back to school next week, so I'm sure most of the people around, if you're local, are starting school around the same time as us. So kind of getting into the routine of, like, what time are your kids going to go to bed, and what time are they going to get up in the morning, and that sort of thing, because I think the more they can expect to be true helps them out. In my class, I just try to teach, like, here's the expectation and routine, but also, like, sometimes we have to be flexible, and I'll try to help you as much as I can if I know something's going to change. So that's
Oh,
usually
that's
what
good.
I do. Like, if you have a plan and then it changes, it's like, this was the plan. Sometimes the plan has to change, but I'll try to let you know when it does.
Yeah.
So I
So I would say one of my tips that I learned with homeschooling, like making the homeschool mornings. Yeah, so my teenager was supposed to help and he decided to go to a movie, or I decided to let him go to a movie, and so he's not here. So things that help in the evening time. Oh, maybe daddy can help. He's here. Yes, she's crazy. She's like having a good time.
oh.
Oh. And he has chocolate because that's dark chocolate's her favorite. She likes all the same food I like, which is so funny. Okay, so our having a good night routine is what prepares your morning. And I know everybody's different on bedtime. Like I have some friends who put their kids to bed at 6:30. Like praise be if I could get my kids to go to bed that early. My kids kind of follow a circadian rhythm clock, which is with the light, which I cannot wait for in a few more weeks and the time changes and they will go to bed earlier. But I heard a speaker talk about having a rhythm where feet are off the floor by a certain time. So she says feet off the floor by 8. Now that all depends on your kids' ages. We started at feet off the floor at 8 and now we're feet off the floor at 9:30 because we have two older ones, like for our older kids. And so then once their feet are off the floor, they're allowed to do so many things, which we say pray, read, write, or they can listen to music, or draw. They can do any of those things. And so their technology is turned off, and we have a system where they actually turn it in. If they're older and they have a cell phone, they are not allowed to have it in their room past a certain amount of time. And so all of those things help us to then come to our room and have our time. They have their time. Everyone goes to bed at a certain time. And then we're rested and happier the next day. So we do go to a homeschool co op. And so that's like school 1 day a week. And with that, I have learned setting out their clothes, getting their lunches as prepared as I can the night before. Oh my gosh, that makes such a difference. And that's how it was when the kids were in public school too. So like I would open their lunch boxes, I would pack everything that I could ahead of time. And I'm not perfect at that. I'm not organized. I'm a midwife, so my schedule's crazy. And there would be times I would get off of that and it just made it so much more hectic. So I don't know. Those were little tips for us.
For sure.
Yeah.
I would say too, something I've learned working with kids for a longer period of time now, and seeing, like, you kind of have to let them be independent, because when I have 20 plus kids in a room, I can't do everything for them when it comes to like little things. And so it's taught me that they can be more independent than you might realize. Like, when you see even Lynn's age, she seems little, and in my head, I would think, oh, I need to do all these things for her. But just trying it out to see, like, what can she do on her own, so it takes one less thing off your plate. So if you have a kindergartner, like, they might be able to do more things than you maybe originally had realized. And so trying it out, and it does take a little bit of like you might not get it done the exact way you had planned, but I've like, for me, whenever I clean up my classroom, I might have it a certain way, but if I can let go of that certain way just a little bit, it will save me time in the end of having to go back and pick up all their pencils and crayons and things all at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
I
I feel like
mean,
trying to give them as much independence as you can. They actually like it. They like jobs, at least in my room. So
yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, that's, yeah, parenthood as well.
yeah.
Okay, I thought of another one actually that somebody said. How to prepare for the first parent teacher conference, which I would add on to that, like how, because I remember this was hard with us with one teacher. What advice can you give parents if they need to bring something up with the parent teacher, or like if it's something that's going to feel a little like, I don't know, confrontational?
Hi,
Oh,
Alex.
hi, hubby.
So you're saying if a parent has something
Like if
they
they
would like
have
to bring
to
up.
bring up, like,
Mhm.
what's the best way to do that? Like, what's the logistics? I just know when I went to parent teacher conferences, every time I was really nervous. I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know the logistics of it. And there was one time where it was like we were concerned about something and they just weren't. And so I didn't know, like, how far do I push that? Do I ask about it? Like
Mhm.
what even is the appropriate time frame? Like, do they need to be aware of this is a 10-minute meeting, or
Right.
whatever? So
I would say it's funny that you said you were nervous because I get nervous for them too. Mostly just because it is like it feels more formal than I think is like typical. I don't know why. I think the name and like having it set in stone, like a schedule. It's funny because I meet with parents all throughout the year, not just parent teacher conferences, like if we need to. But the parent teacher conference, I'm like nervous for. Whereas if they just come in like randomly and we just schedule a quick meeting, I'm not nervous at all. So I think the label of like parent teacher conference feels sophisticated. So it makes both people nervous, I guess. But I would say if you have like a specific honestly, the moment that you feel there's something that you're like wondering or concerned about or whatever, I would like email or whatever messaging platform, email the teacher as soon as you feel those things or like have collected your thoughts that you feel those things. Because then it kind of gives like me as the teacher, it would give me a heads up of like, oh, I hadn't noticed that, but now I'll keep an eye on it to see like, for example, if you felt like they were having, I don't know, like meltdowns or something at home, was there anything at school that might be causing it? If originally I'm like, oh no, I hadn't seen anything, but now I'm going to be ultra paying attention to them at recess and them at lunch and all these areas to see if there's a reason why that might be happening when they get home. Um, so I'd say message. And then if you know specifically, like, oh, there's this big thing I want to talk about at parent teacher conference, maybe just giving like a brief summary or like, hey, I did have some things I wanted to bring up because we do schedule parent teacher conferences. But if we know that we could maybe block out, like, okay, I'll schedule you for 30 minutes instead of the 15 or whatever. But I would say just message beforehand, like, hey, yeah,
communication.
just the communication. And I mean, sometimes you don't realize that you have the thought until you get there. So that happens too. But, yeah, if you have something that you already are like, "Oh, I was really wondering about this," then you could always just message, and usually they would probably say, "Oh, yeah, here's what
They
I'll
should.
do." Yeah.
They should anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, also, we chose this time, which is probably, if you looked at the YouTube algorithm, the absolute worst time, like day and time, to do a live Friday at 5 p.m. But we chose it because it was convenient for the two of us. And so, all that to say, sorry if you missed the live and you don't get to ask questions. But if you want to leave questions in the comments, then I am happy to get them to Kelsey or like tag her and she can respond if it's like specifically for her. If it's for me, you can let me know. And you are welcome to please like leave all your questions and that'll keep going once this posts live. It'll post live. I think it takes like 2 or 3 hours and then it'll post to like just a regular video. So there'll be a little bit of delay, then people can get on and they can watch. And I will be watching that and we will answer any questions that you have if you're watching this after the fact. And I hope
Yeah.
you are. And if people like it, we can do another one. You can also leave an idea for like, hey, this is like something that I would really like to know a lot about from a teacher perspective, or even just like becoming a teacher. I know that sometimes like people have a lot of questions for
Yeah.
that kind of thing, like suggestions with that. But do
Yeah.
you have any other
I
thoughts?
had a few I put a little question
Yeah, you
box on
put
my
one out
Instagram as
too.
well, and I have more teachers who follow me than parents because 'cause I'm not a parent. But, so I had a few teachers respond because I kind of posed the question of, like, "As a teacher, what would you
Mm.
like parents or families to start practicing now?" And the biggest one that I got was actually you could tell it was coming from younger grades, but it was practicing opening up your lunch
Oh,
things.
that's I
So
would have never
so,
thought about
like,
that.
open like, if you send your kid with, any sort of packaging, um, opening up those packages because there's
Wow.
you never know, 200 kids all at once. I mean, maybe not that many depending on your school, but there's a lot of kids in the cafeteria at once, and so sometimes it takes a long time for them to get around to help everybody, and honestly, we are not given very much time for lunch, and so then if your kid's waiting to open their chips for 10 minutes, I mean, hopefully it wouldn't be that long, but you know what I mean? If
I
it
have one like that,
yeah,
so
and so if they're
I
waiting a
can
long time, then
imagine.
they'd have to rush and, like, hurry, so I saw that. I saw really, it was, like, lots of independent type things, like practice with your child how to zip up their jacket, practice with your child how to tie their shoes, like little things like that. And I was like, that is true. I teach third, so by the time they get to me, a lot of those things are, a little bit more independent. But even still, I still sometimes see some of that. So that was the biggest thing I got was that. And then bedtime, we're saying try to keep consistent because usually whenever, and I agree, like when I have any sort of problems the next day, usually it ends up being like, oh, well, I was up really late last night, or it's usually tied to sleep and food. um,
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was
is
asking
yeah,
about, like, bedtime and, like, they
yeah,
didn't get enough to eat. I mean, I just
yeah.
know that even at home, I mean,
Mhm.
if we don't do those things, I have a struggle day the
Yeah.
next day.
And things happen, things come up where like, you can't help it, but I feel like if you try to make those 2 things consistent on like giving enough time for sleep and giving enough time to eat in the morning. Like I know our school provides breakfast, but sometimes I'll have kids who are like, "Well, I didn't have time. I just got dropped off." And so then I try to help them get a snack, but that's not very much
Oh,
substance and it's just like, so
so funny story. I'll just share this funny story. So, we have always made our kids their own breakfast. The school district we were with, they got free lunch, like district wide, got free lunch and free breakfast no matter what. So because of that, there was no like
check-in
system of
system.
check-in, yeah, whatsoever. So if your kid was going to get there for breakfast, you had to drop them off by a certain time and they went to a certain door. If not, then they were going to go to the next door. So we were dropping off Jude, our middle one. Are we surprised about this? In time to get to class because he eats breakfast at home. And I get a note from the teacher that's like, "Can you please make sure Jude is here in enough time for him to eat breakfast? I feel bad, but he's always getting here right before it ends, and there's not enough time, so he's having to eat breakfast in class." To which I'm like, he's not supposed to be getting breakfast." So the next day, we watch. We're like, "What is he doing?" So what he did is he would run to the door that he's supposed to go in, and we would start to drive off, and he would look and he would dart to the other door and go. So I had to tell her, like, listen, he does eat breakfast. And really what it was because the school breakfast, I mean, if you're watching on this channel, Laughing Willow Farms, you all know we're very much about holistic living, making our own food, growing our own food, and the school breakfast provided is very sugary and very enjoyable. And he was in kindergarten. And so he was enjoying the little muffins and all the things. Anyways, it was kind of funny. And
That's
so it
hilarious.
was making his poor teacher's life so hard. And she's thinking, like, oh my goodness, these parents can't get their kid here on time for breakfast. And we're like, no, he eats breakfast. This is a snack.
Yeah,
He gets plenty of food. So,
that's so funny.
yes, this
Yeah.
child.
I
But
think those were the 2 big things that I kept seeing from my people
okay.
were more so just, like, independence, trying to build in independence and routine, so
Mhm. What would you say, because we have just like 3 more minutes left. I was gonna try to keep it at 30 minutes or 2 minutes. What would you say to parents who have a hard time with their kids adjusting the first few weeks? I have one child who he just gets really overwhelmed at the beginning of the year because there's so much to like retain in terms of like there's a new classroom rules and we're
Mhm.
going over all the things we're going to do for the semester and the new flow, and so he feels like it's this big when it's really not. Is there anything that you would suggest to like help that child, that type of personality, that it can just
Yeah.
feel like a lot?
I mean, I would say maybe, like, even reaching out to the teacher to understand. Like, I know as a teacher, I try to send out as much information as I can, but sometimes it can be information overload, so I try to space it out because I'm like, "Well, they probably don't necessarily need every single detail," but for somebody like that, it might help for the parent to know everything, so that way, like, if
Okay.
he's coming to you and you're like, "Well, I don't know what
Hmm.
what time you go to specials," or, like,
Right.
and then it's like, and so a lot of times, like, the teachers will have all of those things already planned out, but they're just trying not to overwhelm the parent by
Hmm.
sending it all, so if you just reach out and ask, like, "Hey, he would really benefit from having," like, even if you posted it on, I don't know, like, I feel like schedule change is usually what seems to
Yeah.
kind of
Hmm.
overwhelm them because 'cause they're trying to remember it all, but just,
Yeah.
like, reassuring them that they don't necessarily have to have it perfectly memorized because that's kind of our job too. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, reaching out and seeing whatever information that might help to kind of go over at home so that way you can be like, okay, well, tomorrow you'll have PE. Like, you'll need to
Mhm.
wear your tennis shoes tomorrow instead of, I
Yeah.
don't know, flip flops.
That's
Or just like little
valid.
things
No,
like
that's
that.
valid because usually when he gets overwhelmed at the beginning of the year, most of the time it's just like clarifications needed. And
Hmm.
so once we get clarification
Hmm.
on whatever it is he's overwhelmed about, then he's not stressed anymore. But in
Yeah.
the moment, it's like,
'Cause
this
he
is
just it
big.
feels unknown, and there is a
Yeah.
lot, and, like, we're navigating teaching it to 20 kids, and you have
Hmm.
the kid who's gonna wonder about all the things, and then you have the kid who's like, "I don't even
I don't,
wanna hear of
yeah,
another
just
thing,
tell me where to
just tell
stand.
me where we're going." Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's, like, trying to balance it, so I would say, reach out to the teacher and just say, "Hey, is there any way we could get, you know, this or whatever?" I will say that just kinda reminded me one last piece of something, at least, and this might not be true for every teacher, but for me, it really helps, is if you're wondering about your child, please, please check in. I always tell my parents, like, if you wanna send me a message every Friday that just says, like, "Checking in," and then it reminds me to check in instead of, like, going and remembering who all wants to check in from me. Because a lot of parents wanna know, like, a weekly update. How are they doing? What can we work on? All those things, but trying to remember for all of my 22, well, I have 2 classes, so, 38 kids who needs a check-in, if you send them a message and say, "Checking in," or like, "What can we do?" Then it kind of sends me a reminder, kinda like a text. So,
Yeah,
I was
that's
gonna
good.
say, if you are ever wondering about your kid, you're not a bother to ask, but sometimes we are like, "Oh, I don't know if they wanna hear from me every week," but if you send me the message, then I'll know.
Then you remember.
Yeah,
That's good. All right,
so
good. Well, thanks for doing this,
yeah,
Kelsey.
this was
And
fun.
where can people find you? What's your
It's
handle on
Kelsey
TikTok?
Boone. It's pretty easy on both TikTok and
But
Instagram.
it's pretty much, I mean, it's mostly classroom teacher content during the school year and
On
the summer.
Instagram, I share a little
Yeah.
more of my life. Her life's much more fun and exciting. But I do share some of the things I'm up to that's not teacher related on Instagram. On TikTok, it's probably
It's all
more
teacher related,
it's
but
more
it's
teacher
super fun.
related.
And I learn a lot too. And I get tips for homeschooling. So it's fun. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well,
Well,
thanks for joining us.
yeah.
We'll do another one.
Yeah.
Until next
Until
time.
next time.
All right.
Bye.
Always forget how to end it. So
Probably
you have to
X.
just exit.